Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. A homeless man helps a lost child, and what happens next will restore your faith in humanity. 10 cars stop at his corner the very next day. Not for what you think. This story proves that when we help others, the universe has a way of helping us back. Real people, real kindness, real consequences that will make you believe in the power of doing the right thing. If this touches your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. You need to hear this story. What I'm about to share with you happened just last month in downtown Phoenix, Arizona, and it's the kind of story that reminds us why we should never judge people by their circumstances. It's about a man named Robert, though most people just walk past him every day without knowing his name. Robert had been living on the streets for 3 years, not by choice, but by a series of unfortunate events that can happen to any of us. He lost his job when the factory closed down, couldn't make his mortgage payments, and eventually found himself with nowhere to go. At 62 years old, starting over felt impossible. But Robert never lost his dignity. And more importantly, he never lost his compassion for others. Every morning, Robert would set up his small cardboard sign at the corner of 5th Street in Washington, right outside the busy shopping district. He wasn't aggressive about asking for help. He'd simply sit there quietly, sometimes reading an old paperback book he'd found, sometimes just watching the world go by. People would occasionally drop some change or a dollar bill, which helped him buy a meal or two throughout the week. Robert had his routines. He knew which restaurants threw out day-old sandwiches that were still perfectly good. He knew which public restrooms were cleanest and which security guards would let him wash his hands without hassle. He knew which benches in the park were safe to sleep on and which ones to avoid. Most importantly, he knew the neighborhood and its rhythms better than anyone. That's why, on that Tuesday afternoon in late September, when he saw a little girl wandering alone near the busy intersection, every alarm bell in his head went off. The child couldn't have been more than 7 years old. She had long brown hair in pigtails, wore a bright yellow dress with little flowers on it, and carried a small backpack shaped like a butterfly. But what caught Robert's attention wasn't her appearance. It was the look of pure terror on her face as she stood frozen on the sidewalk, surrounded by rushing pedestrians who seemed oblivious to her distress. Robert watched for a moment, thinking surely her parents were nearby and would appear any second. But as the minutes passed and no one came for her, and as he saw her little shoulders start to shake with fear, he knew he had to act. Now, Robert understood the reality of his situation. He knew that a homeless man approaching a scared child would raise immediate suspicions. He knew people might call the police or assume the worst. But he also knew that this little girl needed help, and sometimes doing the right thing means risking how others might perceive you. He stood up slowly, brushed off his worn jacket, and approached her carefully, keeping his distance and speaking in the gentlest voice he could manage. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said, crouching down to her eye level, but staying several feet away. "Are you okay? Are you looking for someone?" The little girl looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. "I can't find my mommy," she whispered. "We were in the big store, and I went to look at the toys, and now I can't find her anywhere." Robert's heart broke a little. He glanced around, noting the 3 major department stores within 2 blocks, any of which could have been where she got separated from her mother. "What's your name, honey?" he asked. "Emma," she said, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "That's a beautiful name." "I'm Robert." "Emma, can you tell me what your mummy looks like? And do you remember which store you were in?" Emma's description was remarkably detailed for a second. Her mother had blonde hair, wore a blue coat, and was carrying a big purse with sparkly things on it. She remembered they had been in the store with the pretty dresses in the window, which Robert immediately recognized as Nordstrom. "Okay, Emma, here's what we're going to do," Robert said, pulling out an old flip phone, one of the few possessions he still had from his previous life. "We're going to walk to that store together, and we're going to find your mommy. But I want you to stay right next to me, okay? And if anyone asks, you tell them that Robert is helping you find your mom." As they walked the 2 blocks to Nordstrom, Robert kept up a steady stream of gentle conversation to keep Emma calm. He asked about her favorite colors, her favorite animals, whether she liked school. Emma, who had initially been terrified, began to relax a little. She told him about her cat named Whiskers, her best friend Sophia, and how she was learning to ride a bike without training wheels. When they reached Nordstrom, Robert stopped outside the main entrance. He knew that walking into an upscale department store looking the way he did might create problems. But he also knew that Emma's safety was more important than his comfort. "Emma," he said, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. We're going to go inside and find someone who works here to help us find your mommy, but I want you to remember that I'm here to help you, okay? If anyone seems scared or worried, you tell them that Robert helped you when you were lost." The moment they walked through the doors, Robert saw a security guard's expression change. But before the guard could approach, Emma had spotted the customer service desk and was pulling Robert in that direction. "Excuse me," Emma said to the woman behind the counter. "This nice man helped me find your store because I lost my mommy." The customer service representative, a woman in her 40s named Janet, immediately understood the situation. While another employee discreetly contacted security to let them know everything was okay, Janet got on the store's PA system. "Attention Nordstrom customers. We have Emma here at customer service looking for her mommy. Emma is wearing a yellow dress and has brown pigtails. If you're Emma's mom, please come to customer service on the first floor." Within 30 seconds, they heard the sound of high heels clicking rapidly across the marble floor. A blonde woman in a blue coat came rushing toward them, her face a mixture of relief and panic. "Emma." She scooped her daughter up in her arms, holding her tight. "I was so scared. I looked everywhere for you." Emma hugged her mother back fiercely. "Mommy, this is Robert. He helped me find you. I was really scared, but he walked with me and talked to me about Whiskers and made me feel better." That's when Emma's mother, whose name was Sarah, really looked at Robert for the first time. She saw his worn clothing, his weathered face, and understood immediately what kind of person had helped her daughter. Instead of the suspicion or discomfort that Robert had expected, her eyes filled with tears of gratitude. "Sir," she said, reaching out to shake his hand, "I don't know how to thank you. I was terrified. Security was helping me look everywhere. You probably saved her life." Robert shook his head modestly. "Any decent person would have done the same thing. I'm just glad she's back where she belongs." But Sarah wasn't done. She reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet, but Robert immediately raised his hand to stop her. "Ma'am, I didn't help your daughter for money. I helped her because it was the right thing to do." Sarah paused, then put her wallet away, but she didn't give up on finding a way to thank him. "At least let me buy you dinner," she said. "There's a great restaurant right across the street. Please, it would mean so much to me." Robert was about to decline when Emma piped up. "Please, Robert, Mommy makes really good choices about restaurants." The innocence of the comment made both adults laugh, and Robert found himself agreeing to join them for dinner. Over the next hour, sitting in a comfortable booth at a family restaurant, Robert learned that Sarah was a single mother working as a nurse at Phoenix Children's Hospital. Emma learned that Robert used to work at the same factory where her grandfather had worked before he retired. And Sarah learned that Robert wasn't just any homeless person. He was a man who had fallen on hard times, but never lost his fundamental decency. When dinner was over, Sarah asked for Robert's phone number. He hesitated, embarrassed about his situation. But she insisted. "I want Emma to be able to thank you properly," she said. "And I want to stay in touch. What you did today, ... It means everything to us." That night, as Robert settled onto his usual bench in the park, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. A sense of purpose. He had made a real difference in someone's life. And for the first time in months, he went to sleep feeling truly good about himself. The next morning started like any other. Robert folded up his thin blanket, washed his face in the public restroom, and walked to his usual corner. But as he approached 5th Street in Washington, he noticed something unusual. There was a car parked right near his spot. Not just any car. A nice sedan with a woman sitting inside, apparently waiting. As Robert got closer, the woman got out of the car, and he realized it was Sarah. "Robert," she called out, "I was hoping you'd show up around your usual time." Robert was confused and a little concerned. "Sarah, what are you doing here? Is Emma okay?" "Emma's fine. She's in school. But I couldn't stop thinking about yesterday, and I wanted to do something for you." She walked to the back of her car and opened the trunk. "I brought you some things. Some clean clothes, some toiletries, and I made you breakfast." Robert was touched, but embarrassed. "Sarah, you don't need to do this. I told you, I didn't help Emma for any reward." "I know you didn't. That's exactly why I want to help you." But Sarah wasn't the only one who had been thinking about Robert's act of kindness. Just as she was handing Robert a bag of supplies, another car pulled up. Then another. Within 10 minutes, there were cars lined up along the entire block. Robert stood there in amazement as he realized what was happening. Sarah had posted about the previous day's events on her social media accounts, sharing the story of the homeless man who had helped her lost daughter without expecting anything in return. The story had been shared hundreds of times overnight, and people throughout the Phoenix area had been moved to action. The second car belonged to Maria Gonzalez, a teacher who had brought bags of non-perishable food and a gift card to a local grocery store. The third car held Jim and Betty Morrison, a retired couple who had brought a sleeping bag, a camping chair, and a thermos of hot coffee. The fourth car was driven by Dr. Amanda Chun, who had brought basic medical supplies and information about free health clinics in the area. One by one, people got out of their cars to meet Robert and to thank him for his kindness to Emma. But they weren't just bringing material goods, they were bringing something even more valuable. They were bringing recognition of his humanity and worth. A young man named Marcus, who worked in construction, approached Robert with an offer. "Sir, I heard what you did for that little girl. My company is always looking for reliable people, and we don't care about your living situation. We care about character, and you obviously have that in spades. Would you be interested in a job?" An older woman named Dorothy, who managed a local apartment complex, had a different kind of offer. "Mr. Robert, we have a small studio apartment that needs a caretaker, someone to keep an eye on things, help with small maintenance issues. It doesn't pay much, but it includes free rent and utilities. Would that be something you'd consider?" By the time the morning was over, Robert had received job offers, housing opportunities, medical care, food, clothing, and something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of community and belonging. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when Emma and Sarah returned that afternoon after school. Emma ran up to Robert with a drawing she had made. It showed a tall man and a little girl holding hands. "Read the words, 'Thank you, Robert,' written in purple crayon across the top. I drew this for you in art class today," Emma said, beaming with pride. "My teacher said it was very good, and she wants to put it up on the bulletin board so everyone can see it." Robert knelt down to Emma's level and accepted the drawing with hands that were shaking slightly with emotion. "Emma, this is the most beautiful picture anyone has ever given me. I'm going to treasure it forever." As the weeks that followed, Robert's life began to change in ways he had never imagined possible. He took the caretaker job at Dorothy's apartment complex and moved into the small studio apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, safe, and it was his. He started the construction job with Marcus's company, and his years of experience with tools and machinery made him a valuable employee from day one. But the most important change wasn't in his circumstances, it was in his sense of connection to his community. The people who had stopped their cars that day didn't just help him and move on. They became part of his life, and he became part of theirs. Sarah and Emma visited him regularly. Emma would show him her schoolwork and tell him about her progress, learning to ride her bike. Sarah would bring him dinner sometimes and update him on her work at the hospital. Dorothy became not just his landlord but a genuine friend, someone he could talk to about the challenges of rebuilding his life. Marcus not only gave him a job but also became a mentor, helping Robert navigate the process of getting his life back on track. Dr. Chun helped him access medical care he hadn't been able to afford in years, addressing health issues that had been ignored during his time on the streets. 6 months later, Robert was invited to speak at a local church about his experiences. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of people who had once walked past him without seeing him, Robert shared what he had learned. "I want to tell you something that might surprise you," he said. "The day I helped Emma wasn't the day my life changed. My life changed the day I realized that even when you have nothing, you still have something to give. When you have nothing material to offer, you can still offer kindness, compassion, and help to someone who needs it." He paused, looking out at the faces in the audience, many of which had become familiar to him over the past months. "When I was living on the streets, I thought I had become invisible. I thought I had nothing left to contribute to the world. But helping Emma taught me that we all have value, regardless of our circumstances, and the response from this community taught me that when we choose to see the humanity in others, miraculous things can happen. Robert went on to share statistics about homelessness that opened many people's eyes. He talked about how easy it is for anyone to end up in desperate circumstances, how quickly life can change, and how important it is to treat every person with dignity and respect. The people who stopped their cars that day didn't just change my life with their generosity, he said. They changed my life by seeing me. Really seeing me. Not as a homeless person, but as a human being who had done something good and deserved recognition for it. After his talk, Robert was approached by Janet from Nordstrom Customer Service, the woman who had helped reunite Emma with her mother. She had an idea. "Robert, have you ever considered working in social services? Your experiences give you insights that could help other people in similar situations, and your natural compassion, which we all saw that day with Emma, would make you incredibly effective at helping others." Within a year, Robert had transitioned from construction work to a position with a local nonprofit organization that helps homeless individuals transition back into stable housing and employment. His lived experience, combined with his genuine care for others, made him exceptionally effective at his new job. He became known throughout Phoenix's homeless community as someone who understood their struggles firsthand and could help them navigate the complex systems designed to assist them. Social workers throughout the city began referring their most challenging cases to Robert, knowing that his combination of empathy and practical experience could reach people that others couldn't. But Robert never forgot the lesson that had started it all. Every day, as he walked through the areas where he used to live on the streets, he looked for opportunities to help. Sometimes it was as simple as letting someone know about a free meal program. Sometimes it was helping someone fill out paperwork for housing assistance, and sometimes it was just sitting and talking with someone who felt invisible and forgotten. 2 years after that life-changing day, Robert was invited to be the keynote speaker at Phoenix's annual conference on homelessness. City council members, social service providers, law enforcement officials, and community leaders filled the auditorium to hear his perspective. "Ladies and gentlemen," Robert began, "I want to start by introducing you to the person who truly changed my life." From the audience, a now 9-year-old Emma stood up and waved. She had grown taller, her hair was shorter, but her smile was just as bright as it had been that day when she was lost and scared. "Emma, would you come up here for a minute?" Robert asked. With Sarah's encouraging nod, Emma made her way to the stage. Robert handed her the microphone. "Hi, everyone," Emma said with surprising confidence for her age. "I just wanted to say that Robert is my hero. Not because he helped me when I was lost, but because he shows me every day that being kind is the most important thing you can be." The audience erupted in applause, but Emma wasn't finished. "My mom always tells me that when we help other people, we're really helping ourselves too." And Robert proved that's true. When he helped me, lots of people wanted to help him back. And now he helps other people every day. And that makes the whole world a little bit better. As Emma returned to her seat, Robert took the microphone back with tears in his eyes. "Out of the mouths of babes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Emma just explained something that took me 65 years to fully understand. We are all connected. When we help others, we help ourselves. When we ignore the suffering of others, we diminish ourselves. And when we choose to see the humanity in everyone we meet, we create the possibility for miracles." Robert went on to share specific policy recommendations based on his experiences, both as someone who had been homeless and as someone who now worked with homeless individuals every day. He talked about the importance of treating people with dignity, the need for more affordable housing, the value of job training programs, and the critical role that community support plays in helping people rebuild their lives. But he always brought the conversation back to the fundamental truth he had learned that day with Emma. Every person on the street has a story. Every person panhandling at an intersection has dreams and fears and hopes, just like you do. They have skills and talents and experiences that could benefit our community if we just give them a chance. We don't have to solve everyone's problems, but we do have to remember that they're human beings who deserve our respect and consideration. After his speech, Robert was approached by Mayor Patricia Williams. "Robert, the city is launching a new initiative to address homelessness, and we need someone with your background and expertise to lead it. Would you consider taking the position?" Robert thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment. From a factory worker, to homeless, to hero, to community leader, it was not a path he could have ever imagined for himself. "Major Williams," he said, "3 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left to contribute. But this community showed me that we all have value, no matter our circumstances. If I can use my experiences to help create better systems and support for people who are struggling the way I once struggled, then yes, I would be honored to take that position." As Robert walked out of the conference center that day, he passed the corner of 5th Street in Washington, where his transformation had begun. There was no cardboard sign there now, no man sitting quietly, hoping for spare change. But Robert made a mental note to drive by tomorrow during his lunch break, just to see if anyone else might need help. Because Robert had learned something that day with Emma that had changed not just his life, but his entire understanding of what it means to be human. We are all just one act of kindness away from changing someone's life. We are all just one moment of compassion away from being heroes to someone who needs us. The homeless man who helped a lost child had become a man who was no longer lost himself. And every day, he worked to make sure that the 10 cars that had stopped at his corner that miraculous morning had started a chain reaction of kindness that would never end. Today, Robert lives in a small house he was able to purchase with help from a down payment assistance program for city employees. Emma, now 11, still visits him regularly, and they've maintained a friendship that has enriched both their lives immeasurably. Sarah has become like a sister to Robert, and he's become the uncle Emma never had. The non-profit organization Robert leads has helped more than 500 individuals transition from homelessness to stable housing. The model they've developed, based on treating people with dignity and addressing the root causes of homelessness rather than just its symptoms, has been adopted by cities across the country. But if you ask Robert what he's most proud of, he won't talk about the awards he's received or the recognition he's gained. He'll tell you about the moment he realized that helping Emma wasn't just about finding her mother, it was about finding himself. "That little girl gave me back my purpose," he'll tell you. "She reminded me that we all have something valuable to offer, even when it doesn't feel that way. And she showed me that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can create ripples that spread farther than we ever imagined possible." The story of Robert and Emma reminds us that heroes don't always wear capes or have special powers. Sometimes they're just ordinary people who choose to do the right thing when it would be easier to look the other way. Sometimes they're people who have lost everything but still find a way to give something to someone else who needs it. And sometimes, when we help others, without expecting anything in return, the universe has a way of making sure we receive more than we ever dared to hope for. The next time you see someone who appears to be down on their luck, remember Robert's story. Remember that behind every face you pass on the street is a human being with hopes and dreams and fears, just like yours. Remember that a simple act of kindness, whether it's helping someone find their way, sharing a meal, or just acknowledging their humanity, can change not just their day, but potentially their entire life. Because you never know when your moment to be someone's hero will arrive. And you never know when that moment of heroism might transform your own life in ways you never thought possible. 5 years have passed since that transformative day, when Robert helped Emma, and the ripple effects continue to spread throughout Phoenix and beyond. What started as one man's simple act of compassion has grown into a movement that has touched thousands of lives. The Robert and Emma Foundation, established 3 years after their initial meeting, has become one of the most effective homeless assistance organizations in the Southwest, named to honor both the helper and the one who inspired the help. The foundation operates on the principle that everyone deserves dignity, respect, and a second chance. Emma, now 12 years old and in 7th grade, serves as the foundation's youngest board member. Her insights and perspective continue to shape how the organization approaches its work with both homeless individuals and the broader community. She regularly speaks at schools about the importance of kindness and looking beyond surface appearances to see the person underneath. "When I was 7 and got lost that day," Emma often tells her audiences, "I was scared and alone." But Robert didn't see a problem or a burden when he looked at me. He saw someone who needed help, and he gave it without thinking about what might happen to him. That's the kind of person I want to be when I grow up. Sarah has become one of the Foundation's most dedicated volunteers, coordinating medical care for homeless individuals through her connections at Phoenix Children's Hospital. She's also returned to school to earn a master's degree in social work, inspired by Robert's example to expand her ability to help vulnerable populations. Robert showed me that heroism isn't about grand gestures or dramatic rescues. Sarah explains to anyone who will listen. It's about seeing someone in need and choosing to act, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's risky, even when you have your own problems to worry about. The apartment complex where Robert worked as caretaker has become a model for supportive housing programs throughout Arizona. Dorotha, who had offered Robert that first opportunity for stable housing, worked with city planners to create similar arrangements at properties throughout the metropolitan area. These programs provide not just affordable housing, but also built-in support systems and pathways to employment. What we learned from Robert, Dorothy explains to housing policy advocates, is that people don't just need a roof over their heads. They need to feel valued. They need to feel like they belong somewhere. And they need to know that someone believes in their potential to rebuild their lives. Marcus, the construction company owner who had offered Robert his first job, has since created a formal program to hire and train formerly homeless individuals. The program, which he calls Second Foundation, provides not just employment, but also life skills, training, financial literacy, education, and ongoing mentorship. Robert wasn't just a great employee, Marcus tells other business owners. He brought a perspective and a work ethic that made our entire company better. He understood the value of having a job in a way that people who have never lost everything can't fully appreciate. His gratitude and dedication inspired everyone around him to work harder and care more. Dr. Chun, who had provided Robert with medical care that first day, has since established free health clinics specifically designed to serve homeless populations. These clinics operate with the understanding that healthcare is often the first step toward stability for people living on the streets. When we met Robert, I realized how many barriers exist between homeless individuals and basic healthcare. Dr. Chun explains to medical students she now teaches, it's not enough to have services available if people can't access them or don't feel welcome when they try. We have to go to where people are, both physically and emotionally, and meet them with dignity and respect. But perhaps the most remarkable development has been the creation of what Phoenix now calls Emma's Corners, designated safe spaces throughout the city where people experiencing homelessness can access services, receive mail, and connect with resources without fear of harassment or arrest. The program started when Emma, at age 10, asked her mother why some people were afraid to ask for help even when they needed it. Sarah's explanation about the stigma and legal challenges faced by homeless individuals led Emma to propose a simple solution: create places where it was explicitly safe and legal for people to exist while working toward stability. If Robert hadn't been at his corner that day, he never would have seen me when I was lost. Emma reasoned with the city council members she addressed. Maybe if we made sure people had safe places to be, more good things like that could happen. The Emma's Corners program now operates at 15 locations throughout Phoenix, each staffed by social workers, mental health counselors, and formerly homeless individuals who serve as peer advocates. The Corners provide not just services, but also community, a place where people can maintain relationships and support networks, even while experiencing housing instability. Robert visits each Emma's Corner at least once a month, not in his official capacity as Foundation Director, but simply as someone who understands what it feels like to spend your days in public spaces while other people try not to see you. I remember what it was like to feel invisible. He tells the people he meets at the Corners, I remember thinking that nobody cared whether I lived or died. But I also learned that sometimes the people who seem to have the least to give are actually the ones with the most compassion to share. The stories that emerge from Emma's Corners continue to reinforce the lessons Robert learned that day with Emma. There's Maria, a veteran who lost her housing after struggling with PTSD, who now helps other female veterans navigate the complex benefit system. There's James, a former teacher who became homeless after a series of medical bankruptcies, who now tutors children at the corner near the library. There's Patricia, whose mental illness made it difficult for her to maintain stable employment, who discovered a talent for art therapy and now leads creative workshops for other individuals struggling with mental health challenges. Each person who finds stability through the program becomes an advocate and helper for others, still working toward their own stability. The success of Phoenix's approach has drawn attention from cities across the country and even internationally. Delegations of city officials, social workers, and advocates regularly visit to study the model and adapt it for their own communities. What makes Phoenix different, explains Dr. Janet Morrison, a researcher from Harvard's Kennedy School, who has studied the program, is that they started with the recognition that homeless individuals are not just recipients of services, but also potential contributors to solutions. By centering the voices and experiences of people like Robert, they created programs that actually work because they address real needs in practical ways. The ripple effects extend beyond formal programs and policies. The story of Robert and Emma has been shared so widely that it has changed how many Phoenix residents think about and interact with homeless individuals they encounter in their daily lives. Local restaurants have increased their participation in food rescue programs, ensuring that surplus food reaches people who need it rather than going to waste. Businesses have become more willing to hire individuals with gaps in their employment history or unconventional living situations. Schools have incorporated lessons about homelessness and compassion into their curricula. The beautiful thing about Robert's story, says Father Miguel Santos, who leads outreach efforts at St. Mary's Catholic Church, is that it reminds us that we are all capable of being heroes in someone else's story. You don't need special training or unlimited resources. You just need to be willing to see someone else's humanity and respond to it. Even the original Nordstrom store, where Emma was reunited with her mother, has become part of the ongoing story. The store now partners with local organizations to provide job training and employment opportunities for individuals transitioning out of homelessness. They've also established a small fund that provides professional clothing for job interviews and workplace attire for people starting new positions. Jeanette, the customer service representative who helped that first day, has become a volunteer trainer for the program. That day with Robert and Emma changed how I think about customer service, she explains. It's not just about helping people buy things, it's about treating everyone who walks through our doors like they matter, regardless of their circumstances. The intersection of 5th Street in Washington, where Robert used to sit with his cardboard sign, now features a small plaque that reads, "In recognition of the everyday heroes among us, and the understanding that we are all one act of kindness away from changing someone's life." The plaque was installed not by the city or any official organization, but by a group of community members who wanted to mark the spot where their city's transformation began. But Robert himself insists that the real monument to that day isn't a plaque or a building or even a foundation. It's the changed lives, the strengthened community, and the ongoing commitment to treating every person with dignity and respect. That day with Emma taught me that we never know when we might be someone's only hope, Robert reflects during a recent interview. But it also taught me that when we choose to help someone else, we often end up helping ourselves in ways we never expected. Emma didn't just give me a chance to be her hero that day. She gave me a chance to remember who I really was underneath all the circumstances that had knocked me down. The story continues to evolve, with new chapters being written every day by the hundreds of people whose lives have been touched by the simple act of kindness that started it all. Social workers who were inspired by Robert's example to change their approach to serving homeless populations. Business owners who reconsidered their hiring practices after hearing his story. Children like Emma who learned early that kindness is the most powerful force for change in the world. Recent studies have shown that Phoenix's rates of chronic homelessness have decreased by 42% in the 5 years since Robert helped Emma, while surrounding cities with traditional approaches have seen increases. More importantly, surveys of individuals who have moved from homelessness to stable housing show significantly higher levels of community connection and civic engagement in Phoenix compared to other cities. The numbers are impressive, says Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, who directs the National Coalition for the Homeless. But what's really remarkable is the cultural shift that has occurred in Phoenix. They've moved from seeing homelessness as an individual problem to seeing it as a community opportunity. They've recognized that people experiencing homelessness aren't just recipients of charity, but potential contributors to solutions. This shift in perspective has had profound effects beyond just homelessness services. Phoenix has seen increased volunteerism across all social service sectors, higher levels of civic engagement, and stronger community bonds overall. The city regularly ranks among the top metropolitan areas in the country for social cohesion and community trust. When people see that small acts of kindness can have such dramatic positive effects, explains Mayor Williams, who has overseen much of the city's transformation, they become more willing to take those small acts themselves. Robert and Emma showed us that we don't need to solve all the world's problems at once. We just need to be willing to help one person at a time. Emma, now approaching her teenage years, continues to serve as a powerful advocate for kindness and social justice. She's been invited to speak at conferences around the country, sharing her perspective on how children can be agents of positive change in their communities. Adults sometimes think that kids can't make a difference in big problems like homelessness. Emma often tells her audiences, "But I was just 7 years old when I met Robert, and that meeting changed hundreds of people's lives." Kids can do a lot more than adults think we can, especially when it comes to seeing people for who they really are, instead of just what they look like. Emma's influence extends beyond just speaking engagements. She's also become a mentor to other young people who want to get involved in community service, showing them that age is not a barrier to making meaningful contributions to social change. Sarah, who has completed her master's degree in social work, now directs the Clinical Services Division of the Robert and Emma Foundation. Her medical background, combined with her personal experience of almost losing her daughter, gives her a unique perspective on trauma-informed care and family-centered approaches to social services. "What I learned that day when Emma was lost," Sarah explains to the social workers she trains, "is that crisis moments reveal who we really are." Robert could have walked past Emma, could have assumed someone else would help, could have worried about how it would look for a homeless man to approach a scared child, but he chose to act with compassion despite the risks, and that choice changed all our lives. The training programs Sarah has developed emphasize the importance of seeing strength and potential in every person, regardless of their current circumstances. Social workers throughout Arizona now receive specialized training in what she calls asset-based engagement, focusing on what people can contribute rather than just what they need. Marcus's construction company has become a model for inclusive hiring practices throughout the construction industry. The Second Foundation program has helped more than 200 formerly homeless individuals gain stable employment, and many have gone on to start their own businesses or move into leadership roles within the industry. What Robert taught us, Marcus explains to other business owners, is that people's past circumstances don't define their future potential. Some of our most reliable, hardest-working employees are people who have experienced homelessness. They understand the value of opportunity in a way that inspires everyone around them to do better. The success of the Second Foundation program has led to similar initiatives in other industries throughout Phoenix. Law firms hire formerly homeless individuals as paralegals and office administrators. Restaurants provide culinary training and employment opportunities. Healthcare systems train people to work as community health advocates and peer counselors. Dr. Chan's health clinics have become a national model for healthcare delivery to vulnerable populations. Medical schools throughout the country now send students to Phoenix to learn about culturally competent care for homeless individuals and trauma-informed medical practice. Robert taught us that healthcare isn't just about treating diseases. Dr. Chan explains to the medical students who rotate through her clinics, it's about treating human beings with dignity and respect, understanding that their health is connected to their housing, their employment, their relationships, and their sense of hope for the future. The clinics have also pioneered innovative approaches to mental health care, recognizing that trauma and mental illness are both causes and consequences of homelessness. By providing integrated physical and mental health services in welcoming, non-judgmental environments, the clinics have achieved remarkably high success rates in helping people achieve stability. Dorothy's housing model has been replicated at more than 50 properties throughout Arizona and several other states. The combination of affordable housing with built-in support systems and pathways to employment has proven highly effective at preventing returns to homelessness. What we learned from Robert Dorothy tells housing developers and policymakers is that housing alone isn't enough. People need community, they need purpose, and they need to feel valued. When we create housing that addresses all these needs, we don't just end homelessness, we create thriving communities. The housing program has also pioneered innovative financing mechanisms that make supportive housing development economically viable for private developers while keeping units affordable for residents. These models are now being studied and adapted by housing authorities throughout the country. But perhaps the most significant long-term impact of Robert's story has been its influence on a generation of young people who are growing up with a different understanding of homelessness and social responsibility. Schools throughout Phoenix now include age-appropriate lessons about homelessness, poverty, and social justice as part of their standard curriculum. Students learn about the complex factors that can lead to housing instability and the various ways communities can respond with compassion and effectiveness. Children who grow up understanding that homelessness can happen to anyone, and that people experiencing homelessness deserve respect and support, become adults who create more just and compassionate communities, explains Dr. Patricia Jennings, who developed the curriculum used throughout Phoenix schools. Student-led initiatives inspired by Robert and Emma's story have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for homeless services, organized supply drives, and created mentorship programs connecting students with individuals transitioning out of homelessness. High school students in Phoenix regularly volunteer at Emma's Corners, providing tutoring, technology assistance, and companionship to people working toward stability. Many go on to pursue careers in social work, public health, urban planning, and other fields focused on social justice. Robert's story taught us that everyone has something valuable to contribute, says Jessica Martinez, a recent high school graduate who plans to study social work in college. When I volunteer at the Corners, I learn as much from the people I'm supposedly helping as they learn from me. Everyone has wisdom to share if we're willing to listen. College students from universities throughout Arizona regularly volunteer with the Robert and Emma Foundation, gaining hands-on experience in community organizing, social services delivery, and policy advocacy. Many of these students go on to careers in public service or establish their own nonprofit organizations. The story has also inspired artistic and cultural responses throughout the community. Local theaters have performed original plays based on Robert and Emma's story. Musicians have written songs celebrating the power of kindness and community connection. Visual artists have created murals and sculptures that commemorate the transformation that began at 5th Street in Washington. Art has the power to keep important stories alive and help people connect emotionally to social issues, explained Maria Torres, a local artist whose mural depicting Robert and Emma is displayed at the city's main library. When people see Robert and Emma's story represented in art, it reminds them that they have the power to be heroes in someone else's story. The annual Robert and Emma Day, observed each September on the anniversary of their first meeting, has become Phoenix's largest community service event. Thousands of volunteers participate in activities ranging from preparing meals for homeless shelters to cleaning up public spaces to registering voters. Robert and Emma Day isn't just about remembering one act of kindness, explains the event's coordinator, David Kim. It's about recommitting ourselves to building the kind of community where everyone looks out for everyone else, where no one falls through the cracks, and where every person's dignity and potential are recognized and supported. The day's activities are designed to bring together people from all walks of life, breaking down barriers between housed and unhoused individuals, volunteers and service recipients, longtime residents, and newcomers to the city. The goal is to strengthen social connections and build understanding across different communities. Local businesses participate by offering special discounts and services, with proceeds donated to homeless services. Restaurants provide free meals, hair salons offer free services to people experiencing homelessness, and employers host job fairs, specifically designed to welcome applicants with non-traditional backgrounds. The business community learned from Robert's example that when we invest in people, everyone benefits, explains Chamber of Commerce President Angela Davis. Companies that participate in Robert and Emma Day don't just fulfill their civic obligations, they discover talented employees, loyal customers, and meaningful connections to their community. The media coverage of Robert and Emma's story has extended far beyond Phoenix, inspiring similar initiatives in cities throughout the United States and internationally. Documentaries, podcast episodes, and news features have shared their story with millions of people worldwide. What makes Robert and Emma's story so powerful, explains journalist Michael Thompson, who has covered homelessness issues for 15 years, is that it demonstrates how individual acts of compassion can create systemic change. It shows that we don't have to wait for politicians or institutions to solve social problems. We can start making a difference right where we are. International delegations from countries including Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and several European nations have visited Phoenix to study the community's approach to homelessness. Many have adapted elements of the Phoenix model for their own cities and regions. The Phoenix approach represents a fundamental shift in how we think about social problems, explains Dr. Hans Müller, a social policy researcher from Germany who has studied the city's programs. Instead of seeing homelessness as an inevitable byproduct of economic systems, they see it as a solvable problem that requires community-wide engagement and recognition of human dignity. The international attention has also brought resources and opportunities to Phoenix, including research partnerships with universities worldwide and pilot programs funded by international foundations interested in supporting innovative approaches to homelessness. But Robert himself remains focused on the day-to-day work of helping individuals rather than celebrating the broader impact of his story. He still spends his lunch breaks driving past the areas where he used to live on the streets, still stops to talk with people who might need assistance or encouragement. All the recognition and awards are nice, Robert says, but what really matters is knowing that fewer people have to spend tonight sleeping outside. Fewer children have to worry about where their next meal will come from, and fewer families have to experience the fear and uncertainty that Sarah felt when Emma was lost. Robert's approach to leadership emphasizes humility, direct service, and centering the voices of people with lived experience of homelessness. The foundation he directs operates with the understanding that the people who have experienced problems are often the best equipped to develop solutions. I never forget that I'm one paycheck, one medical emergency, one family crisis away from being back where I started. Robert explains to Foundation staff and volunteers that keeps me grounded and reminds me why this work is so important. We're not saving people. We're creating conditions where people can save themselves. This philosophy has shaped every aspect of the Foundation's work, from service delivery to policy advocacy to fundraising. Board meetings include formerly homeless individuals as equal participants. Program development is guided by input from current and former service recipients. Staff training emphasizes the importance of mutual respect and shared decision. The Foundation's annual report each year includes not just statistics about services provided and outcomes achieved, but also stories and reflections from people whose lives have been impacted by the organization's work. These stories serve as reminders of the human faces behind the numbers and the ongoing need for compassion and community support. Emma continues to play an active role in the Foundation's work, bringing a young person's perspective to program development and community outreach. Her insights often challenge adults to think more creatively about solutions and to consider how current policies and practices might look from a child's point of view. Emma reminds us that kids are affected by homelessness too, even when they're not the ones without housing. Robert explains, children see homelessness in their communities, they worry about it, and they want to help address it. We need to create meaningful ways for young people to get involved in solutions. Emma's Corner program has expanded beyond Phoenix to include similar initiatives in 12 other cities across the United States. Each location adapts the basic model to fit local needs and conditions, but all share the core principles of dignity, respect, and community engagement that characterize the original Phoenix program. Youth involvement has become a signature element of Emma's Corners programs nationwide. Young people serve as volunteers, advocates, and program developers, bringing energy and fresh perspectives to homelessness services while learning valuable lessons about social responsibility and civic engagement. When kids get involved in addressing homelessness, they learn that social problems aren't inevitable or unsolvable, explains Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who coordinates the National Emma's Corners Network. They see that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences, and they develop confidence in their own ability to create positive change. The success of youth engagement initiatives has led to increased focus on intergenerational approaches to social problems. Programs throughout Phoenix now deliberately bring together young people and older adults, recognizing that both groups have unique contributions to make two community solutions. Robert often speaks about the importance of intergenerational connection in his presentations to community groups and policymakers. Emma was 7 years old when she changed my life. Young people see possibilities that adults sometimes miss, and older adults have experience and resources that young people need. When we bring the generations together, amazing things can happen. The relationship between Robert and Emma continues to evolve as Emma grows older and develops her own interests and passions. Now 12, she's becoming interested in policy and advocacy, often asking Robert about the systemic changes needed to prevent homelessness, rather than just responding to it after it occurs. Emma's questions keep getting harder. Robert laughs. She wants to know why we don't just build enough affordable housing for everyone who needs it, why we don't make sure everyone has health care, why we allow people to work full-time and still not earn enough to afford rent. These are the right questions to ask, and they push me to think more deeply about the work we're doing. Emma's evolving understanding of social justice issues reflects the broader impact of Robert's story on how Phoenix approaches systemic problems. The city has become more willing to address root causes of homelessness rather than just managing its symptoms, leading to increased investment in affordable housing, mental health services, and job training programs. Policy changes inspired by Robert and Emma's story include increased minimum wage requirements, tenant protection ordinances, and zoning reforms that allow for more diverse types of housing development. The city has also invested heavily in prevention services designed to help people maintain housing stability before crisis occurs. Robert's story taught us that it's much more effective and humane to prevent homelessness than to respond to it after it happens, explained City Councilwoman Lisa Rodriguez. When we invest in keeping people housed, we save money in the long term, and we prevent the trauma and disruption that comes with losing one's home. The prevention approach has been particularly effective with families, veterans, and older adults, populations that are often easier to help before they become homeless than after they've lost their housing. Early intervention services include rental assistance, mediation with landlords, assistance with benefits applications, and connection to appropriate health care services. Sarah's work at the Foundation has been instrumental in developing family-centered approaches to homelessness, prevention, and intervention. Her medical background and her experience as a single mother give her unique insights into the challenges faced by families experiencing housing instability. When families become homeless, children like Emma are the ones who suffer most, Sarah explains. They lose not just their homes, but often their schools, their friendships, their sense of security and stability. Everything we can do to prevent family homelessness is an investment in children's futures. Family services developed under Sarah's leadership include emergency childcare, school advocacy, and trauma-informed counseling services. The programs recognize that addressing adult needs like employment and housing is essential, but that children's needs for stability, education, and emotional support require specialized attention. The success of Phoenix's family-centered approaches has attracted attention from child welfare systems throughout the country. Many jurisdictions are now exploring how collaboration between homeless services and child welfare systems can better serve families experiencing multiple challenges. What we've learned in Phoenix, explains Dr. Carol Martinez, who directs the state's child welfare system, is that homelessness and child welfare issues are often interconnected. When we address them together rather than separately, we achieve better outcomes for both children and adults. This integrated approach has led to significant reductions in family separations due to housing instability and improved outcomes for families involved with both systems. Children are more likely to remain with their parents when families receive coordinated support that addresses multiple needs simultaneously. The collaborative model developed in Phoenix has become a national example of how different systems can work together more effectively. Federal agencies now highlight Phoenix as a model site for integrated service delivery, and the city regularly hosts trainings and technical assistance sessions for other jurisdictions. But perhaps the most lasting impact of Robert and Emma's story is the cultural shift it represents from seeing social problems as someone else's responsibility to recognizing that we all have a role to play in creating solutions. This shift is visible in everything from increased volunteerism to more compassionate public discourse about poverty and homelessness. Before Robert helped Emma, a lot of people in Phoenix saw homelessness as an individual failure or a problem that government should handle, reflects longtime resident Margaret Johnson, who has lived in the city for 30 years. Now we understand that it's a community issue that requires community solutions, and that all of us have something to contribute. This understanding has led to increased civic engagement across all areas of community life. Voter participation rates have increased significantly since Robert and Emma's story began circulating. More people attend city council meetings and participate in public forums. Neighborhood associations are more active in addressing local issues. When people see that their individual actions can have significant positive impacts, they become more invested in their community overall, explains political science professor Dr. James Williams, who has studied civic engagement patterns in Phoenix. Robert and Emma's story demonstrated that ordinary citizens can create extraordinary change, and that lesson has inspired people to get more involved in all kinds of civic activities. Local elections now regularly feature candidates who cite Robert and Emma's story as inspiration for their public service commitments. Policy debates include more discussion of how proposed changes might affect the city's most vulnerable residents. Budget discussions give greater priority to social services and community support programs. The story has become part of Phoenix's civic DNA, observes longtime city employee Patricia Santos. It's changed how we think about ourselves as a community and what we're capable of achieving when we work together. The transformation extends beyond just government and formal organizations to include changes in how neighbors relate to each other and how businesses engage with their communities. Property managers are more willing to work with tenants experiencing temporary financial difficulties. Employers are more flexible about work schedules and requirements for people managing complex life circumstances. There's been a real cultural shift toward giving people the benefit of the doubt and looking for ways to help rather than reasons to exclude, explains small business owner David Chun. Robert's story reminds us that we never know what challenges someone else might be facing, and that a little flexibility and compassion can make all the difference. This cultural shift has had measurable impacts on community well-being indicators beyond just homelessness rates. Phoenix has seen decreases in crime rates, improvements in public health outcomes, and increases in economic mobility. Researchers studying the city's transformation point to increased social cohesion and community trust as key factors in these broader improvements. When communities become more compassionate and supportive, everyone benefits, explains Dr. Maria Rodriguez, who directs the Urban Studies program at Arizona State University. Robert and Emma's story catalyzed a virtuous cycle where kindness and support create conditions that make it easier for more kindness and support to flourish. The ongoing ripple effects of one simple act of compassion continue to surprise even those who have been most closely involved in the story. New developments and unexpected connections emerge regularly, demonstrating that the full impact of Robert's decision to help Emma may never be fully measurable. Just last month, a young man named Carlos approached Robert at one of the MAS Corners locations. Carlos explained that he had been living in his car with his infant daughter when he heard Robert's story on the radio. Inspired by the example of how helping others can transform communities, Carlos had started volunteering at a local food bank, despite his own struggles. "I figured if Mr. Robert could help someone when he had nothing," Carlos told Robert, "then I could help people even while I was living in my car. And you know what happened? The people at the food bank helped me find transitional housing, and now I have a job there. Your story taught me that helping others is how we help ourselves." Carlos is now pursuing his GED and planning to study social work. His daughter, now a toddler, often accompanies him to community events, where she's becoming known for her infectious smile and her father's dedication to serving others. Stories like Carlos's remind us that Robert and Emma's influence continues to spread in ways we never anticipated, reflects Sarah. Every person who has been touched by their example has the potential to touch other lives, creating an endless chain of positive impact. The story has also inspired creative responses that continue to amplify its message and reach new audiences. A children's book based on Robert and Emma's story has been published, with proceeds supporting homeless services. Local schools use the book to teach lessons about kindness, community, and looking beyond surface appearances. A documentary film about the transformation of Phoenix premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and has been broadcast on national television, reaching millions of viewers worldwide. The film follows not just Robert and Emma's story, but also the stories of other individuals whose lives have been changed by the community's response to their example. The documentary has been particularly powerful because it shows that this isn't just one feel-good story, explains filmmaker Jennifer Martinez. It demonstrates how individual acts of compassion can create systemic change when communities choose to embrace and build upon them. The film has sparked conversations about homelessness and community responsibility in cities throughout the United States and internationally. Many viewers have organized screenings followed by community discussions about how similar approaches might work in their own contexts. A Broadway musical based on the story is currently in development, with plans for a portion of proceeds to support homeless services nationwide. The musical will feature songs and storylines that celebrate the power of human connection and community engagement while educating audiences about the realities of homelessness. Theater has the power to help people emotionally connect to social issues in ways that statistics and policy papers can't, explains the musical's composer, Michael Rodriguez. We want audiences to leave the theater not just entertained, but inspired to look for opportunities to make a difference in their own communities. Academic institutions have also embraced Robert and Emma's story as a teaching tool. Business schools use it to explore corporate social responsibility and stakeholder engagement. Social work programs analyze the community organizing and system change aspects of the story. Education schools examine how the story can teach children about social justice and civic engagement. The story works on multiple levels, explains Dr. Patricia Johnson, who teaches nonprofit management at the University of Phoenix. It's simultaneously a story about individual heroism, community organizing, systems change, and social justice. Students can engage with whichever aspect most resonates with their interests and career goals. Research studies based on Phoenix's approach to homelessness have been published in academic journals focusing on social work, public policy, urban planning, and community development. These studies provide evidence-based support for the effectiveness of community-centered approaches to social problems. The Phoenix model demonstrates that evidence-based practice and community-driven solutions can work together, explains Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who has conducted extensive research on the city's programs. Robert and Emma's story provided the emotional catalyst, but the sustainable change has come from rigorous evaluation and continuous improvement of programs and policies. The research has been particularly valuable for other communities seeking to replicate Phoenix's success. Studies have identified key elements that appear to be essential for similar transformations, including leadership by people with lived experience, extensive community engagement, and integration across multiple service systems. International research collaborations have emerged as scholars from other countries study the Phoenix model and explore how it might be adapted for different cultural and political contexts. These collaborations have led to pilot programs in several countries and have contributed to global conversations about human rights and social justice. Robert and Emma's story has become part of an international dialogue about how communities can better support their most vulnerable members, explains Dr. Hans Müller, the German researcher who has studied Phoenix's programs. The specific approaches may need to adapt to local conditions, but the underlying principles of dignity, community engagement, and mutual support are universally applicable. As Emma approaches her 13th birthday, she continues to evolve in her understanding of the impact she and Robert have had. She's become interested in policy and advocacy, often accompanying Robert to speaking engagements and adding her own perspectives to his presentations. I used to think that the important part of our story was that Robert helped me when I was lost, Emma recently told an audience of social workers, but now I understand that the really important part is what happened after that, how our whole community decided to help each other. That's what made the real difference. Emma's maturing perspective reflects the broader evolution of how Phoenix understands its transformation. What began as a story about one act of kindness has become a story about sustained community commitment to social justice and mutual support. Emma's right that the individual act of kindness was just the beginning. Robert agrees. The real miracle was how our community chose to respond to that act with more kindness, and 10 more until it became a way of life for all of us. This understanding has shaped how both Robert and Emma approach their ongoing work. Rather than focusing on their individual story, they emphasize the community's collective response and the ongoing opportunities for others to contribute to positive change. The Robert and Emma Foundation's latest initiative, launched on the 5th anniversary of their meeting, focuses specifically on empowering other individuals to become catalysts for community transformation. The One Act program provides small grants and technical assistance to people who want to start their own community improvement projects. We learn that you don't need a big organization or a lot of money to make a difference, explains program coordinator Maria Santos. Sometimes you just need one person who cares enough to take action, and the community will respond if the need is real and the approach is genuine. The One Act program has funded dozens of grassroots initiatives throughout Phoenix and surrounding communities. Projects include community gardens in food deserts, after-school tutoring programs in underserved neighborhoods, support groups for people experiencing various challenges, and informal networks that connect neighbors who can help each other with daily needs. One particularly successful project was started by Teresa Valdez, a retired teacher who noticed that many children in her neighborhood didn't have access to books at home. With a small grant from One Act, she established little free libraries throughout her area and organized weekly reading circles in local parks. I was inspired by Robert's story to look for ways I could help in my own community, Teresa explains. I didn't think I could do anything as dramatic as what he did, but I realized that every child deserves access to books and the magic of reading. Sometimes the smallest actions can have the biggest impact on individual lives. Teresa's reading program has expanded to serve more than 200 children and has inspired similar initiatives in 6 other Phoenix neighborhoods. Several children who participated in the early programs are now high school students who volunteer as reading mentors for younger children. Another One Act project was initiated by James Patterson, a veteran who struggled with PTSD and substance abuse issues before achieving stability with help from Phoenix's integrated service system. James noticed that many veterans experiencing homelessness were reluctant to access services because of shame and mistrust of formal systems. I remembered how Robert had approached Emma with gentleness and respect, meeting her where she was instead of expecting her to come to him, James explains. I thought maybe I could do something similar with veterans who were living on the streets. James started spending time in areas where homeless veterans gathered, simply talking with them and sharing information about available resources when they seemed ready to hear it. He didn't pressure anyone to accept services, but offered to accompany them to appointments if they decided they wanted help. James understood something that took our formal outreach workers years to learn, explains Dr. Patricia Martinez, who directs Veterans Services for the county. Sometimes the most effective outreach is just one person with lived experience being present and available, without any agenda except to offer support and connection. James's informal outreach has helped more than 50 veterans connect with housing, healthcare, and other services. Many have gone on to achieve stable housing and employment, and several have become outreach workers themselves, continuing the cycle of peer support. The One Act program has also supported initiatives focused on strengthening connections across different demographic groups within the community. The Generations Together project pairs older adults with young families to provide mutual support and combat isolation. Eleanor Washington, an 83-year-old widow, was connected through the program with the Rodriguez family, who had recently emigrated from Mexico and were struggling to navigate systems and services in their new community. Mrs. Washington has become like a grandmother to our children, explains Carmen Rodriguez. She helps them with their English homework, and they help her with technology and getting around the city. We all benefit from the friendship, Eleanor adds. These children have brought so much joy into my life, and helping their parents learn about resources in the community makes me feel useful and connected to my neighbors in a way I hadn't experienced since my husband passed away. The Generations Together program now includes more than 100 intergenerational partnerships and has been replicated in communities throughout Arizona and several other states. Research studies have shown significant improvements in mental health, social connection, and community engagement among participants. What we're seeing through programs like this, explains Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who studies community development initiatives, is that Robert and Emma's story has inspired people to look for creative ways to build connections across traditional boundaries. People are recognizing that we all have something to give and something to receive from our neighbors. The success of grassroots initiatives has also influenced how Phoenix approaches larger policy and system changes. City officials now regularly consult with One Act, project leaders, and other community members when developing new programs or policies, recognizing that people closest to problems are often closest to solutions. Robert's story taught us that good ideas can come from anywhere, and that people experiencing problems firsthand often have insights that professionals and officials miss, explains City Councilwoman Lisa Rodriguez. We've tried to institutionalize that learning by creating more opportunities for community input and leadership in our decision-making processes. This approach has led to more effective and culturally responsive policies across multiple areas of city government. Transportation planning now includes extensive input from people who rely on public transit and walking. Housing policies are shaped by feedback from both housed and unhoused community members. Economic development initiatives prioritize projects that benefit existing residents rather than displacing them. The participatory approach has also increased community trust in government and civic institutions. Survey data shows that Phoenix residents express higher levels of confidence in local government compared to residents of similar cities, and voter participation rates continue to increase across all demographic groups. When people see that their voices are heard and their ideas are valued, they become more invested in civic life, explains political scientist Dr. Michael Thompson, who has studied Phoenix's governance changes. Robert and Emma's story created an expectation that everyone's contribution matters, and the city has risen to meet that expectation. Sarah's work has evolved to include training and technical assistance for other communities. Interested in replicating Phoenix's family-centered approaches to homelessness, prevention, and intervention, she regularly travels to other cities to share lessons learned and help local organizations develop their own programs. What we've learned in Phoenix is that every community has the capacity to create transformative change. Sarah explains to the social service leaders she trains. The specific programs might look different depending on local needs and resources, but the core principles, dignity, respect, community engagement, and recognizing everyone's potential, are universally applicable. Sarah's training programs emphasize the importance of starting with individual relationships and acts of kindness, then building systems and policies that support and scale those individual connections. She often shares Robert and Emma's story as an example of how personal relationships can catalyze broader social change. Policy and program changes are important, Sarah tells training participants, but they're most effective when they build on a foundation of genuine human connection and mutual respect. Robert didn't help Emma because of a policy or program. He helped her because he saw someone who needed help, and he chose to act with compassion. The training programs have reached social service organizations in more than 30 states and several other countries. Many have adapted Phoenix's approaches to their own contexts, creating new models for community-centered responses to homelessness and other social challenges. Marcus's Second Foundation program has similarly expanded beyond Phoenix, with construction companies in 12 states now implementing similar hiring and training initiatives. The program has helped more than 800 formerly homeless individuals gain stable employment in the construction industry. What started as one company's decision to give Robert a chance has become a movement within our industry. Marcus explains to other construction business owners, "We've proven that hiring people with lived experience of homelessness isn't just good for the community, it's good for business." These employees bring dedication, gratitude, and perspectives that make our entire workforce stronger. The construction industry's embrace of inclusive hiring practices has had ripple effects throughout other sectors. Healthcare systems now actively recruit people with lived experience of homelessness to work as peer counselors and community health advocates. Retail businesses have developed training programs for employees who have experienced housing instability. Financial institutions have created specialized programs to help people rebuild credit and establish banking relationships after periods of housing instability. Robert's stories showed us that people's past circumstances don't define their future potential, explains Human Resources Director Angela Davis. When we hire people who have overcome significant challenges, we're not just giving them opportunities. We're gaining employees who understand the value of work and who bring unique insights to our organizations. Dr. Chun's health clinics have become training sites for medical professionals from around the world. The trauma-informed, culturally responsive approaches developed in Phoenix are now taught in medical schools and residency programs throughout the United States and internationally. What we learned from Robert and our other patients, Dr. Chun explains to visiting medical students, is that effective healthcare requires us to understand the whole person and their life circumstances, not just their medical symptoms. When we treat people with dignity and address their healthcare needs in the context of their housing, employment, and social support systems, we achieve much better outcomes. The medical training programs have been particularly influential in changing how healthcare providers approach patients who are experiencing homelessness. Studies show that medical professionals who complete training in Phoenix demonstrate significantly higher levels of cultural competence and achieve better health outcomes with vulnerable populations. Dorothy's housing model continues to expand, with supportive housing developments now operating in more than 100 locations across the United States. The model's combination of affordable housing, built-in support services, and pathways to employment has achieved remarkable success rates in helping people maintain stable housing long-term. What Robert taught us, Dorothy explains to housing developers and policymakers, is that housing alone isn't enough. People need community, purpose, and hope for the future. When we create housing that addresses all these needs, we don't just prevent returns to homelessness, we help people thrive. The housing developments have become models for community building more broadly. Residents regularly organize social events, mutual aid networks, and advocacy initiatives. Many have become leaders in their broader neighborhoods, contributing to local improvement efforts and serving as bridges between different community groups. The people who live in our supportive housing developments aren't just residents, they're community leaders, Dorothy observes. They understand the importance of neighbor helping neighbor, and they bring that understanding to everything they do. The success of supportive housing initiatives has influenced housing policy at state and federal levels. Arizona now provides tax incentives for supportive housing development, and federal agencies regularly highlight Phoenix's programs as examples of effective approaches to ending homelessness. Emma's role in ongoing initiatives continues to evolve as she grows older and develops her own leadership skills. Now 13. She serves on the Youth Advisory Board for several community organizations and has begun speaking independently at conferences and community events. I used to just tell the story of how Robert helped me. But now I talk about how communities can create conditions where more people like Robert feel empowered to help their neighbors. It's not enough to wait for heroes. We need to be the heroes ourselves. Emma's presentations emphasize the role that young people can play in community transformation. She encourages her peers to look for opportunities to help others and to speak up about issues they care about, regardless of their age. Kids have important perspectives that adults sometimes miss. Emma tells audiences of both young people and adults, we see things differently. We ask different questions, and we're not limited by assumptions about what's possible or practical. Adults should listen to us more, and we should speak up more about what we think needs to change. Emma's advocacy has contributed to increased youth engagement in local government and community organizations throughout Phoenix. The city now has a youth advisory council that provides input on policies affecting young people, and many community organizations have created formal roles for youth leadership and participation. Emma has shown us that age isn't a barrier to meaningful contribution to social change, explains Youth Program Coordinator David Martinez. Young people bring energy, creativity, and fresh perspectives that are essential for addressing complex community challenges. The emphasis on youth engagement has also influenced educational approaches throughout Phoenix. Schools now incorporate more opportunities for students to engage with real community issues and to develop solutions to problems they identify in their neighborhoods. High school students regularly present policy recommendations to city council members and school board officials. Middle school students participate in community mapping exercises that identify assets and needs in their neighborhoods. Elementary students learn about community helpers and practice acts of kindness as part of their regular curriculum. Education is most meaningful when it connects to students' lives and communities, explains Dr. Patricia Jennings, who directs curriculum development for Phoenix schools. Robert and Emma's story reminds us that learning about social responsibility and civic engagement should start early and should be grounded in real experience. The educational changes have had measurable impacts on student outcomes. Phoenix schools have seen improvements in student engagement, academic performance, and post-graduation civic participation. Students report higher levels of connection to their communities and greater confidence in their ability to create positive change. When students see that their actions can make a difference in their communities, they become more invested in their education and their future, explains high school principal Maria Rodriguez. They understand that learning isn't just about individual advancement. It's about building the skills and knowledge they need to contribute to something larger than themselves. The story of Robert and Emma has also inspired changes in how Phoenix approaches economic development and business attraction. The city now prioritizes businesses and organizations that demonstrate commitment to community engagement and social responsibility. We learned from Robert's example that our greatest asset isn't just our economic resources or our location. It's our community's commitment to taking care of each other, explains Economic Development Director James Wilson. Companies that share those values are the ones we most want to attract and support. This approach has attracted numerous mission-driven businesses and organizations to Phoenix, creating a concentration of enterprises that prioritize both profit and purpose. These businesses have created thousands of jobs while also contributing to community development through their hiring practices, volunteer programs, and financial support for local initiatives. Phoenix has become known as a place where businesses can succeed while also making a positive impact, explains Chamber of Commerce President Angela Davis. That reputation attracts both businesses and workers who want to be part of something meaningful, creating a virtuous cycle of economic and social development. The economic development approach has also prioritized supporting existing small businesses and entrepreneurs, particularly those owned by people from underrepresented communities. Loan programs, technical assistance, and mentorship opportunities help local residents start and grow businesses that serve community needs. Robert's story reminds us that people who have experienced challenges often have unique insights into community needs and creative approaches to addressing them, explains Small Business Development Coordinator Lisa Martinez. Supporting their entrepreneurial efforts creates both economic opportunities and solutions to social problems. Many businesses started by formerly homeless individuals or other people who have experienced significant challenges have become community anchors, providing not just goods and services but also employment opportunities and gathering spaces for neighbors. Carlos, the young man who was inspired by Robert's story to volunteer while living in his car, has since started a mobile food truck that provides affordable, healthy meals in underserved neighborhoods. The truck employs several other formerly homeless individuals and contributes a portion of proceeds to support homeless services. Robert's example taught me that you don't have to wait until you have everything figured out to start helping others. Carlos explains, sometimes the best businesses come from understanding community needs because you've experienced them yourself. The food truck has become a beloved fixture in several Phoenix neighborhoods, providing not just meals, but also a gathering point for community members and a symbol of how individual challenges can be transformed into community assets. Similar businesses started by people with lived experience of homelessness or other challenges include a landscaping company that employs formerly homeless veterans, a house cleaning service that provides training and employment for people transitioning out of substance abuse treatment, and a child care cooperative that serves families experiencing housing instability. These businesses prove that people experiencing social problems aren't just recipients of services. They're potential entrepreneurs and job creators, explains Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who studies community economic development. When we support their business development efforts, we create solutions that are sustainable and responsive to real community needs. The success of mission-driven businesses has also influenced established companies throughout Phoenix. Many have adopted more inclusive hiring practices, expanded their community engagement efforts, and incorporated social impact goals into their business planning. Robert and Emma's story challenged all of us to think about how we could contribute to community well-being, explains longtime business owner Patricia Santos. It's not enough anymore to just focus on profit. Customers, employees, and community members expect businesses to be part of the solution to social challenges. This shift in business culture has contributed to Phoenix's reputation as a city where social innovation and economic development work together. The city regularly hosts conferences and workshops that bring together business leaders, social entrepreneurs, and community advocates to explore collaborative approaches to community challenges. The 10th anniversary of Robert and Emma's first meeting is approaching, and planning is underway for a celebration that will highlight both the progress made and the ongoing work still needed. The anniversary event will feature not just Robert and Emma's story, but also stories from dozens of other community members whose lives have been changed by the ripple effects of that original act of kindness. We want the 10th anniversary to be less about looking backward and more about looking forward, explains event coordinator David Kim. Robert and Emma's story started something beautiful in our community, but the story isn't finished. We want to celebrate what we've accomplished, while also recommitting ourselves to the ongoing work of building a community where everyone can thrive. The anniversary celebration will include the launch of new initiatives designed to address emerging challenges and opportunities. A mental health support network will provide peer counseling and advocacy services. An environmental justice program will address how climate change and environmental degradation disproportionately affect vulnerable communities. A digital equity initiative will ensure that all community members have access to technology and digital skills training. Each new challenge is an opportunity to apply the lessons we learn from Robert and Emma, explains Foundation Director Robert himself. We know that sustainable solutions come from centering the voices of people most affected by problems, building on community assets, and recognizing that we all have something valuable to contribute. Emma, now approaching her 14th birthday, has begun thinking about what she wants to study in college and how she wants to contribute to social change as an adult. Her interests include policy advocacy, community organizing, and international development work. I used to think that getting lost that day when I was 7 was just a scary thing that happened to me, Emma reflects. But now I understand that it was the beginning of learning about how communities can take care of each other. I want to spend my life helping communities figure out how to do that better. Emma's evolving interests reflect the global impact that Robert's story has had. She corresponds with young people in other countries who have been inspired to start their own community improvement projects, and she's beginning to understand how local acts of kindness can connect to broader movements for social justice and human rights. Emma is becoming a global citizen, observes her mother, Sarah. Robert's local act of kindness opened her eyes to how individual actions can create change, not just in our neighborhood, but around the world. I'm excited to see how she uses that understanding as she grows older. The international connections sparked by Robert and Emma's story continue to grow and evolve. Delegations from more than 20 countries have visited Phoenix to study the community's approaches to homelessness, and many have maintained ongoing relationships with local organizations and leaders. What we've learned through these international exchanges, explains Dr. Hans Müller, the German researcher who first studied Phoenix's programs, is that while the specific strategies for addressing social problems need to be adapted to local contexts, the underlying principles of human dignity, community engagement, and mutual support are truly universal. Recent international collaborations include a relationship with a community in Canada that has adapted Phoenix's Emma's Corners model, a research partnership with universities in Australia studying community-based approaches to homelessness prevention, and a pilot program in the United Kingdom that trains formerly homeless individuals as peer advocates and service providers. Robert and Emma's story has become part of a global conversation about how communities can better support their most vulnerable members, explains international development specialist Dr. Maria Rodriguez. The Phoenix model demonstrates that effective social change doesn't require massive resources. It requires genuine commitment to seeing and supporting the humanity in everyone. The global impact has also brought additional resources and opportunities to Phoenix. International foundations have provided funding for program expansion and evaluation. Academic institutions worldwide have established research partnerships with local organizations. Cultural exchanges have enriched the community's understanding of how different societies address similar challenges. But Robert himself remains focused on the daily work of helping individuals and strengthening community connections. Despite all the recognition and acclaim, he continues to spend time in the areas where people experiencing homelessness gather, still stops to talk with anyone who might need assistance or encouragement. All the international attention and academic research is wonderful, Robert says, but what really matters is that tonight fewer people will sleep outside, fewer families will go hungry, and fewer children will feel scared and alone like Emma did that day. That's how we measure success. One person, one family, one act of kindness at a time. This individual focus, combined with systems-level thinking and community-wide engagement, represents the unique approach that has made Phoenix's transformation so effective and sustainable. The city has managed to scale up individual compassion without losing sight of the personal relationships and human connections that make change meaningful. What Phoenix has achieved, observes Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who has studied community transformation processes, is rare in social change work. They've created systems that support and amplify individual acts of kindness rather than replacing them with bureaucratic processes. They've maintained the human scale even as they've achieved citywide impact. This balance between individual and systemic change continues to guide new initiatives and program development throughout Phoenix. Every new program is evaluated not just on its measurable outcomes, but also on whether it strengthens human connections and community bonds. The story of Robert and Emma, which began with one homeless man's decision to help one lost child, has become a story about how communities can transform themselves through sustained commitment to kindness, dignity, and mutual support. It's a story that continues to unfold every day in Phoenix and in communities around the world where people have been inspired to look for opportunities to help their neighbors. As we approach the 10th anniversary of that life-changing day, the lesson remains clear. We are all just one act of kindness away from changing someone's life, and quite possibly transforming our entire community in the process. The question isn't whether we have the power to create positive change. The question is whether we'll choose to use that power when the opportunity arises. Robert's corner may be empty now, but his legacy lives on in every person he's helped, every life he's touched, and every reminder that we are all just one act of kindness away from making the world a better place. Emma may no longer be that scared 7-year-old who got lost in a department store, but she continues to inspire others to find their way to compassion, community, and service to others. Their story reminds us that heroes aren't born. They're made in moments of choice when ordinary people decide to do extraordinary things for others. And sometimes, when we choose to help someone else, we end up saving ourselves in ways we never imagined possible. The homeless man who helped a lost child became a man who was no longer lost himself. The scared little girl who needed help became a young woman dedicated to helping others. The community that witnessed their story became a place where miracles happen not just once, but every single day. And that, perhaps, is the most beautiful part of their story. It doesn't have an ending. It just keeps beginning again. Every time someone chooses kindness over indifference, community over isolation, and hope over despair. In Phoenix, Arizona, and in communities around the world. Robert and Emma's legacy continues to grow, one act of kindness at a time.